I didn't know if I could ever forgive him. The betrayal was like a heavy weight pressing down on me, suffocating in its intensity. Time was supposed to heal all wounds, wasn't it? But standing in the aftermath of everything, I wasn't sure if even time could repair what had been shattered. For now, though, I needed to be alone, to gather my thoughts and figure out what was next. It felt like the only option, the only way to quiet the storm inside my head. There was a calmness in the separation, a sense of clarity that began to surface as the noise of my emotions started to settle. John had promised to give me space, and to his credit, he stayed true to his word. We didn't speak for nearly 2 weeks. During that time, I did everything I could to sort through the mess of emotions he had left behind. It felt like trying to untangle a knot that only grew tighter the more I pulled at it. Part of me missed him, missed the way things had been before the lies and the hurt that seemed to stretch back further than I could pinpoint. I longed for the comfort of what we had, the ease of it all, before the world between us fractured. But there was another part of me, the stronger part, that knew something inside of us had broken. It wasn't a small fracture that could be patched up with time and promises. It was deeper, more fundamental. Trust, that fragile thing we had built together, was gone, shattered beyond recognition. And once that trust is broken, can it ever truly be rebuilt? I didn't think so. Just as I was beginning to feel like I could breathe again, John forced his way back into my life in the worst possible way. It started innocently enough, if anything could be considered innocent at that point, with a text message. But it wasn't from John. It was from my father. As soon as I saw his name on the screen, my heart sank. His message was short, straightforward. He wanted to meet for coffee, to talk things through, to move forward. His words felt calm, reasonable, but my gut twisted. I knew immediately what had happened. John had broken his promise. John had given my father my number. I felt the blood rush to my face, my pulse quickening with anger and disbelief. How could he? After everything I had asked, after all the boundaries I had so carefully set, he had gone behind my back. I dialed his number, my hands trembling as I waited for him to answer. When he did, there was no hesitation in his voice, no trace of guilt. He admitted it freely, like it was nothing. I thought it was time, he said, his tone casual, as if he had made a decision on my behalf. I gave your dad your number because I thought it was time for you to make peace with him. I know you said you needed space, but I've been thinking about it, and you'll be happier in the long run if you just talk to them. For a moment, I couldn't find the words. The audacity of it left me speechless. He thought he could decide what was best for me, what I needed. My anger surged, hotter now, clearer. When I finally spoke, my voice was sharp and cold, the kind of cold that cuts. You don't get to decide that, I said, my anger barely contained. You don't get to decide anything about my family or my life. I told you to stay out of it, and you went behind my back. Again. He tried to interrupt, his voice soft and soothing, but I wasn't finished. I had made myself clear so many times, and he had ignored me over and over. This wasn't about love. This was about control. No, John. You need to listen. You've shown me, again and again, that you don't respect my boundaries. This isn't love. This is manipulation. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a brief moment, I thought he might argue, try to turn things around like he always did. But instead, he sighed, a quiet, pitiful sound. I just wanted to help, he muttered, his voice thick with self-pity. But I was done. I had no more sympathy to offer. His excuses, his justifications, his refusal to take responsibility for what he had done, it was all too much. We're done, I said firmly, each word final, heavy with the weight of months of pent-up frustration. This is over. Don't contact me again. I'm blocking you. And if you try to reach out, I'll go to the police. I hung up before he could say anything more, my heart racing, my hands shaking. I felt a surge of relief, brief but powerful. It was over. I had made the decision I should have made long ago. John was out of my life, and I could finally start to heal. But the relief didn't last. It never does with people like him. The harassment started almost immediately after the breakup. At first, it was subtle, small things easy to brush off, if I tried hard enough. Blocked calls came at odd hours of the night. When I answered, there was only silence on the other end. Then the emails started. John had created new accounts, several of them, and began sending me long, rambling messages. Some were apologies, desperate pleas for forgiveness, promises that he would change. Others were filled with anger, accusations that I was the one throwing everything away. That I was the one who had ruined what we had. I blocked every email address he used, but new ones appeared within days. He was relentless. And it didn't stop with the emails. Sometimes, flowers would show up at my door, bright, beautiful bouquets, always with handwritten notes. Apologies. Promises. Requests to meet and talk things over. I threw the flowers away without a second thought, but every time I saw them, my stomach twisted into knots. The sight of them was a reminder that he wasn't letting go. Then I started seeing him. It began as small glimpses, his car parked down the street from my apartment, or him standing across the road, watching. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then I saw him again. And again. And I couldn't deny it anymore. One night, as I drove home from work, I noticed his car behind mine. My pulse quickened, fear rising in my chest. I tried to lose him, taking random turns down unfamiliar streets, but he stayed with me, like a shadow I couldn't escape. I felt trapped. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached. I didn't want to go straight home, afraid that he would follow me all the way there. Instead, I detoured to a crowded parking lot, hoping that if I stopped somewhere busy, he would give up. I parked and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. His car circled the lot once, twice, before disappearing into the night. I stayed there for another hour, too afraid to go home. The fear didn't fade. A week later, I woke up to find my car vandalized. The tires were slashed, and a deep scratch ran along the side of the car. I knew it was John, even though I couldn't prove it. The police filed a report, but without witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. I felt trapped in my own life, constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every unfamiliar sound, every unexpected sight. I didn't know what John was capable of, and the not knowing was worse than anything. Then he started leaving letters. I would find them slipped under my door, or in my mailbox, sometimes in the middle of the night. They were long, handwritten notes filled with rambling declarations of love, apologies, and desperate pleas. In some, he blamed me for everything, calling me stubborn, selfish, the reason things had fallen apart. In others, he begged for another chance, just one more conversation. It was terrifying. I never responded to any of his messages, hoping he would eventually get the hint and leave me alone. But he didn't. One day, as I walked to my car, I felt someone watching me. I turned around, and there he was, standing across the street, staring at me. My stomach dropped, fear tightening my throat. I quickly got into my car and drove away, but the image of him standing there, watching me, haunted me for the rest of the day. That evening, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. The calls, the emails, the flowers, the stalking, it was too much. I went to the police again, this time with all the letters, emails, and photos I had taken of him lurking outside my apartment. They took me seriously, filing a restraining order against him. For a while, things seemed to calm down. John stopped contacting me, and for the first time in what felt like months, I started to feel a little more at ease. I began to believe that I could finally move on. But that peace didn't last. One evening, I came home after a long day at work and noticed something was wrong. The front door to my apartment was slightly ajar. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze. Had I forgotten to lock it? Was someone inside? I slowly pushed the door open, my hands shaking as I stepped inside. My worst fears were confirmed. The apartment was a mess. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. And there, in the middle of the chaos, was John. He was sitting on the floor, looking.